This past weekend, right outside Atlanta, Georgia, Charlie's Collectible Show held a 10K Lorcana tournament, and some of the best Lorcana players showed up to compete.
We're sitting down with the winner, 15-year-old Luca Serano, to hear about his deck and his tournament prep. Let's check it out.
Hey, my name is Luca Serano. I've been playing card games for about 10 years now, 9 years. I started playing at a young age because of my dad. He's a pro Magic player, and from that age, I just started playing onwards and onwards of TCGs.
Oh, that's awesome. How long have you been playing Lorcana?
I've been playing Lorcana since the start, so whenever it came out, about a year ago.
So, Luca, you're 15 years old, and you won this major tournament and get some very, very good players. What advice would you give to other young Lorcana players who are looking to take the leap into competitive play against some older competitors?
I didn't think about it as an age gap from everyone else because I've been playing TCGs that so long that everyone else was just me. I didn't think of it in any different way, but I think it's cool being younger and playing TCGs because everyone's like, oh, this is a kid's card game, but none of the kids play it. But being a kid, everyone's like, oh, I'm gonna take it easy on this kid, and then I win at 10K. It's really cool that happened. I've topped a couple SCGs for Lorcana, but could never close the deal.
Can you tell us about your deck and why you settled on Ruby Amethyst for this tournament?
So I settled on Ruby Amethyst for a couple of reasons. I've been playing the deck for the start of Lorcana. I really fell in love with the deck because it played like a Magic deck a lot. I really like the draw powers of the deck. And I think there were just a lot of strong cards. I thought Be Prepared really stood out from every other card because there wasn't a board wipe effect in the game yet. And it still continues on this way. There's a couple of cards that kind of match that, but nothing quite like Be Prepared. The draw power really was something for me, like rabbits. The bounce effect, being able to close the games off with Goat, and now we have Castle in the game. It's just been really nice. The kill spells are obviously great, so I've been really happy with the deck.
So in this iteration of the deck, what is your win condition? What are you trying to do?
So my win condition can be a couple of different things. It can be just chip damage off of my Maleficents and my rabbits, and my Tremaines on my kill spell effects. I can also win off of castles. A lot of lines you saw me, I would play a Be Prepared, and then afterwards against blue decks, I would land double castle, or I'd play a castle and a character and move them. And you kind of just protect your castle, make sure it stays, and then you can just gain incremental lore off of that and win. Goat bounce, obviously, that's a lot. Those were a lot of my lines against Kendall Burnett, another red-purple friend of mine. I played triple Goat both games in, I believe it was top 4.
Yeah, we saw that. The triple Goat was that was brutal. You did it twice.
Yeah.
Your games were so crazy. Can you talk about what your ideal first 4 turns look like?
So it's kind of matchup dependent. I think normally it's just play a Chernobog on 1, play the Flynn Frenemy on turn 2, and then turn 3 I'll play a Sisu, and that can close out a lot of games. That's really a big ender. It's hard for decks to beat that. That gains so much lore over time. Turn 4 normally a rabbit. Depending on the plays, my turn 3 can also be a Maleficent Sorceress, and then my turn 5 will be play a snake, bounce my Maleficent Sorceress, replay Maleficent Sorceress, and then on 6 I can play a kill spell or a castle, move 2 characters to it. Those are normally my plays.
This sounds like your early game, kind of your mid game, and then your end game. It sounds like you're working up towards a Be Prepared or some sort of control where you can immediately use and then you can use castles to close out the game. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, castles, and it depends on the matchup. Occasionally in the mirror match, I will hold my goats because you can drop goats in 1 turn, and it'll be so against Kendall. I was at so much lore that I played my goats and he couldn't kill them because I'd win the game off of it. Or you just goat bounce goat, kind of stabilize with that, but don't play anything out, and that will normally end the game.
Can you tell us what your ideal matchups are and like what decks you look forward to playing against?
So I think my best matchups are the one that comes to mind immediately is my blue-red matchup. I think it's close to an above 90% win rate. I've had a lot of matches versus it. Um, One thing I like to go over against blue players is like the game isn't going anywhere. Like neither of you need to be like fast paced. Like they cannot get the game over with quickly. So just play it slow. Like they cannot they cannot get the game over with outside of Lucky Dime and like questing with little things. So just play slow, try and develop like a good hand to where you can't lose to anything. Go B prep and then just play out your castles. It's really hard for them to like get out of a castle. They can Maui plus something, but they have to have something else. So never let them keep anything on board. It doesn't matter how bad it is. If it's like a 1-3 do nothing vanilla, just get rid of it so they cannot Maui plus anything. I feel pretty confident in the red-purple matchup just because I have so many reps against the deck in set 3 and set 4 included, and I talk to a lot of red-purple players, so I know the matchup a bit better, but the matchup sometimes does come down to just drawing better than your opponent, and those happen. My weaker matchups are like green-steel. Those are obviously pretty tough. I'd like to think the matchup's like close to 60-40. Sometimes it depends on how your opponent's play style and how your opponent is as a player. The matchup really is just about like top decking well.
Can we talk a little bit about the green steel matchup? What is it about that deck that is challenging for you to play against?
The low removal to Diablo. So we have our 4 brawls, but late game, like dealing with it is a little bit easier. Like we have Medusa and stuff, but getting to that point is hard because they have a lot of discard effects, and it's hard to keep our hand high enough to continue the game. Stuff like that.
Your version of this deck doesn't run a lot of one-drop characters. You have Chernobog's followers at 4 copies, and that's about it. Why don't you think it's necessary to have a one-turn play all the time?
So generally, you don't need them in a lot of matchups. I think going into the tournament, I talked to a lot of my friends, my fellow red-purple players, about like whether one-drops were needed or whether they were not. And I think it was matchup dependent because I never really was like, I need a one-drop here in this matchup. Against Green Steel, I only wanted a one-drop that I could situationally draw off of because on turn 2, like they play one-drop Diablo and then they pass. I want to be able to quest with my Chernobog and get rid of it before they can Diablo in quest. But things like Broom couldn't do that, and that was a really big problem for me. Also, the 1-2, that was a problem because against Flynn Frenemy, you really needed the bigger body. Another thing was it was about like sometimes I'm like scared to play a random one drop where it can sometimes be good or die. But for Chernobog, it was never that. Like, I could get rid of it and have a random ink that I needed because I didn't want to get rid of a good card. But, like, the 4-drops just weren't needed. I really like playing a more control-style build and just, like, sticking a castle and really, like, continuing the game. Just killing anything and leaving castle up was my main goal for each matchup.
One thing I noticed in your build is there's not a lot of 1-ofs or 2-ofs. In fact, the only 2-of in this deck is Lady Tremaine at 2 apiece. So it feels like this deck is really, really consistent and that you're seeing a lot of the cards you want to see every game. Was consistency one of the things you were thinking about with this build?
Yes and no. It kind of just like happened as I built the deck. Is just like there's a lot of 4-of cards. Like I know I'm gonna play 4-of all the like Merlin package. I was thinking going into the tournament I was gonna go to 61 cards and play 3 Tremaine. It was my decision not to just stick with my friends list, but also I was already kind of high on uninkables and didn't want to lose matchups just based off of I drew bad and I'm gonna lose the matchup now. So I tried to keep it, I was already quite high, I wanted to keep it a little lower.
It's so interesting to me that just like one card going to 61 and having another uninkable, like that's the tipping point. You're like, oh no, I'm good at like this amount of uninkables, but one more uninkable could tip the scales. And like that level of detail and that minutia in your deck makes a difference. And I don't think a lot of new players are thinking about just the tiniest, adding that 61st uninkable card can win or lose a game.
Yeah, it was really about like playtesting. Like I had a lot of playtesting going into the tournament, and I was just like, I think I'd just stick with my build. And it felt fine in some situations. I had to ink my good cards, so I was like, I think I just keep it at this. I think it's a nice number, and I think 16 was my and like ended up being my number.
Can I ask a little bit just about your preparation? You know, you said you've been playing Ruby Amethyst for a long time. When a new set comes out, when you're in the middle of playtesting, how do you begin to kind of like weave in some of these new card options? How do you decide which new card am I going to try to weave into this deck first and begin that playtesting process?
So it takes a lot of tournament. It takes a lot of like, it really does take a lot of like having people to talk to. It's really important to have a playtest team with you. For me, I was able to talk to my peers about like what is needed in these matchups, what do we mulligan for, like going over mulligan percentages and matchups. We do a lot of 2-on-2 playtesting where we were open-handed talking about the plays, going back online. If we didn't think something was correct, we would like try and talk about it a little bit more, discuss with our opponent on how we felt about it.
So Luca, in the past you've mentioned the importance of having a team around you. Can you talk a little bit about why that's important and how it's helped you get to where you are?
So it's really important for me. My team is Team Ohana. We have we're on all socials, and that's been really important because we're near each other. We're able to gather up and playtest, talk with each other, theory craft, things like that, talk each other through lines. That is always really important. Being disciplinary to yourself, knowing that you can make mistakes is always very important. And having a team tell you, you made this mistake is very important in card games.
You mentioned mulligans. What is your mulligan strategy with this deck? What cards are you always keeping, and what cards are you generally sending back?
So generally, it's all uninkables. It sometimes can be rabbit. If I'm in the blind and don't know what I'm playing against, I will generally keep a rabbit because it's not bad against a lot of decks. Same for Brawl. Brawl is only bad in like the mirror match, but the card is so important in your worst matchup that you kind of have to develop your hand around just only beating your worst matchup and kind of working your way up to beating everything else. So for me, that's keeping Chernabog, Maleficent, one rabbit, a Brawl, because Brawl hits most of your like matchups. It hits Green Steel, it can hit the frenemy in the mirror match, it can hit Hiram, and then any like fast X it can also hit. Maleficent is generally just good. It will replace itself. One of the important thing that I talk about a lot is keeping friends on the other side of your hand. Against Green Steel, if they are not playing Bucky on turn 2, that is a win for you. If they're playing Ursula over Bucky, that is a win for you. You should just be winning that game, because if they're taking one card instead of playing the best card in their deck, you're already, I feel, miles ahead.
So they're
Interesting.
Not playing, are you thinking they're not playing Bucky on turn 2 so they don't have it in their hand? Like where does that confidence boost come from?
Yeah, so if they don't Bucky on 2, it generally means they don't have it, or they want to wait till turn 4 and play double Bucky into Shift Diablo. Occasionally, like I don't think you would ever want a Ursula on turn 2 over a Bucky. Maybe to keep your Diablo around against Teeth and Ambitions, but not many players are playing that, so I don't think there's a reason to play around that. So generally in my mind, it just means you don't have the Bucky, and that's good for me. And yeah.
So, Lady Tremaine, not every Ruby Amethyst deck is running her now. We see her subbed out a lot. Why did you choose to run 2 copies of her in your version of this deck?
I really liked having the extra kill spells because I'm more of a control-y player, and being able to like play your castles out and just play Tremaine was really nice. I really wanted it against the blue steel decks that were playing Cogsworth. I know all blue steel players play Cogsworth, but specifically for that card against them, it helped with my blue-red matchup. That matchup is already quite favorable, but anything that makes it a matchup more favorable is always good. It improved my red-purple mirror match because we were going chip damage, like who has better kill spells, and I ended up having more to deal with like random things like rabbits. But the card also quests for 2, like it can end the game occasionally. A line that came up a lot for me was going play Tremaine and then on the following turn shift onto Tremaine, play a bounce effect, and then like that like closes out many matchups. Just like getting rid of something and having 2 more of that in hand was always really nice.
One thing that I'm interested in, you talk about being a control player. What does that mean to you? Why do you enjoy control over aggro? When someone says, I'm a control player, why do you make that choice?
So for me, it was really just like playing Magic a lot. I ended up being on like combo decks, but we don't have that in Lorcana, unfortunately, yet, which I don't think it should be in Lorcana yet. It's a little early for combo decks, but I always really enjoyed the feeling of playing slower games. I'm a very fast player because I don't want to be on a time constraint. Like, I don't want my opponent to feel pressured into playing faster because I am playing slow, and I don't want to lose a game because I'm playing slow. It also, if my opponent is a slower player, it gives me, like, nothing is going to happen. Also, it gives me turns to really think about my plays and lines when I play faster. That is one thing I really advise everyone to do, is think about your turns on your opponent's. Like, think about your turn on your opponent's turn, so you can really, like, you don't have to waste that time of, like, what am I gonna do, counting your ink, things like that. Just have that set up. Those are really important things. That is one thing I do, and I try to be cognizant of if my opponent is doing.
What makes Ruby Amethyst good?
I mean, it's just like the combination of cards, like being able to support each other. All of the purple cards really combo well with all of the kill spells in red. Like, Maui supports a lot of the cards where you can like go aggro and protect it. Like, it helps your when your opponent's going faster, you can deal with it. I really like the kill spell aspect. Drawing a lot of cards, obviously everyone loves drawing cards. And I think the deck is really good into everything. Like, it doesn't have a bad matchup. But the more you play the deck, the better you will get against matchups because of how you play. And that is one thing I've really enjoyed about the deck, is knowing that I am not like stone cold losing into any deck, and how I play really matters. My mulligans, like, tiny details matter. Like, should I have inked this one turn? Should I have played this one turn? Did I mulligan correctly? Like, it should never only be your fault that you are losing a game. And I really like that about Lorcana in general, and TCGs in general. Like, there's always something you did wrong.